Hello, my name is Olurotimi Osha. I like talking about American presidents, and today I'm going to be continuing with my uh, argument exposing the public corruption of Judge James Bonifant of Montgomery County. Of course, when I talk about American presidents, I talk about my wrongful detention, my wrongful arrest, and the false charges against me in Montgomery County, Maryland. I've given the reasons why, they all came up. The malicious prosecution, it's a violation of 18 USC uh, section 241 and 242, deprivation of rights, and also a 42 USC section 1983, malicious prosecution. In addition, it's intended to obstruct justice. So Judge Bonifant, today I'm going to be arguing that Judge Bonifant actually uh, he has abused the process. It's 3 years now. He's used dilatory tactics. He's fabricated evidence. He's committed fraud upon the court. He's used false witnesses that don't exist. He's violated principles of natural justice in his conflict of interest. He has a conflict of interest. I've done videos talking about how he has a fiduciary interest and personal financial interest in MedStar Hospital. I did a video discussing, the role of MedStar Hospital, which I have a malpractice complaint against. They're the ones that the police dumped me, after they assaulted me and shot me on May 16, 2023. The hospital I was dumped in and held, and during that time, an ex parte peace order was filed against me by a tenant who is a criminal, an illegal alien named Germa Shumi. He can't speak a word of English. I had never spoken with him in my life. I had no interaction with him. His relevance is on May 14, 2023, he had attempted to kidnap me with Jide Warere and one other young man. And so they assaulted me. However, while I was being wrongfully detained, I learned from a sheriff deputy who brought me a peace order. But the hospital, MedStar Hospital, where Judge Bonifant is on the board of, is a board of director, is a director on its board, um, prevented me, right, from being able to go to attend the peace order, to challenge the peace order. So there was an ex parte order saying barring me from uh, my apartment, my building, barring me, not barring me from the building, but barring me from going to Moshumi's apartment, right? Because he stayed in 506 down the hall from me. I stayed in apartment 503. The building in question is 2301 Glen Allen Avenue, Silver Spring, Maryland. Uh, zip code 20906. I stayed in apartment 503. He stayed in apartment 506. Now, on May 14th, Germa Shumi, a young man that I'm assuming it is his son, and then Jide Warere assaulted me and, attempted to kidnap me, saying they wanted to take me to a psychiatrist, bizarrely, outrageously. So this was all part of an orchestrated, pre-planned scheme to illegally evict me from my apartment, from where I lived, because I'd actually filed complaints against the building owner, AION Management. It's a slumlord. Their building was in disrepair. Their lease property manager was sexually harassing me, was making all sorts of, had swatted me once, had made a false 911 call just because I didn't want to, talk to her, telling complete lies. The police officer came, Officer Bright. This was in October of 2022 or thereabout, between October and December, and he told me that I was being harassed and I could file a restraining order against her, but I didn't want to. One of the ways this stemmed from is that they were posting false failure to pay notices on my door. The sheriff would come, so it was harassing. I'd get these letters all the time, and it would be posted on Maryland's case search. In Maryland, if anybody files something against you, it shows up in their public record, so it becomes public record. So it's looking bad if there are like 10, 20 false failure to pay notices saying I'm not paying rent. As of that time, I was holding a top secret clearance, TSSCI, right? And my job, the nature of my job, so that's something that could jeopardize my clearance, right? And so I had to, and it was defamatory because it was false. They would have The building would apologize, an assistant property manager would apologize and say it was an error because they would investigate it and say I owed nothing. I had a zero balance. In fact, they owed me money. I paid a security deposit. I paid in advance because at some point I wondered if they wanted me to pay rent in, several months in advance, which is illegal. They can't do that, right? But I paid several months in advance. So they would investigate it and find, it was an error. But eventually, what they now told me was that it was an error from Montgomery County itself. But I don't know how that made sense because that was not public housing I was living in, right? It was a private business that I was renting in. But it turned out I was not the only one getting it. I met other Africans who were also getting these false failure to pay notices, and they started moving out of the building. So Montgomery County was colluding with AION Management. AION Management is the landlord, is the owner of the building, to kick out minorities so they could raise their rents. That's what the other tenants eventually told me. They said that was what AION Management was doing. So I filed a complaint because it violates Fair Housing Act, right? That's the Civil Rights um, Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968. So it violates it prohibits discrimination, right? And and unsavory practices to prevent people of national origin or race or religion, to prevent them from renting or housing, obtaining housing. So I filed a complaint against them for unethical practices. They are unethical practices with the Maryland Attorney General's office, Consumer Protection Division, and they started to investigate it. I filed with the U.S. Fair Housing Act, the federal, that's HUD. Sorry, the act is Fair Housing Act. The agency is HUD, Housing and Urban Development, right? Now they delegated to Maryland's housing authorities. They have their own agencies. So Maryland Commission on Civil Rights was investigating. The Office of Attorney General was investigating, and then they interviewed me. They wanted to interview them. They sent them notices that they needed to talk to them. Sent them notices that if they didn't respond, they might prosecute them. The last notice I saw was May 7th. There was one titled May 17, 2023. I have a copy of that. By that time, of course, the illegal eviction occurred and the swatting, right? The assault by the police happened May 16, 2023. So the building made a false threat call, right? They falsified a call to the police. That's a swatting. That's actually a criminal act, right? It's in violation. It's a federal making false threats, false hoaxes of a threat, of a danger going on. But it was orchestrated by the courts, by the police. It was the Montgomery County Police that engineered it. I have the documents. I have the false fabricated documents, that the false police reports that they created. So the Montgomery County falsified reports. Now, today, though, what I want to talk about is Judge Bonifant's role. So on around May 17, while I was in the hospital, a sheriff's deputy brought a peace order from a guy called Glenmont, the man who had attempted to kidnap me and who had assaulted me. I never responded. I never touched him. I called the police, right? And my friend spoke with the police, but the police falsified the incident report. So it was something that was already staged ahead of time, right? So the peace order said I couldn't go to his house and I shouldn't abuse him. That's what it was. But in the statements, he lied that I kidnapped him into my apartment, threw him on the floor, twisted his arm, told him I was a cop, and seized his phone. But he managed to escape. And then I attacked. He said he reported it to police, and then I attacked him another day, saying, "Why did I report him to police?" All of that was fabrications. What was interesting is that Germa Shumi had my age, knew my name. I'd never spoken with him. So GDY, who filed the false emergency violation petition, did not even have my age. I don't celebrate my birthday, and because of my job, I'd hidden my age. My age wasn't public. It's the Montgomery County now that has just displayed my age. The pretext is that okay, that I'm charged with a crime to the public, and but the thing is, it violates PII, personal information, person identifying information. So they're not supposed to be publishing these personal details. Montgomery County had first started with their doxing. So when they were posting the false failure to pay notices, that's called doxing, right? It's actually, there's a law against it because it was falsified information. I don't put my information out there. So when they file a failure to pay notice, failure to pay rent, they put your address. Now, I was working for the Department of the Navy. I had government property with me. It put me at risk, right? It put me at risk. It put me because I was a national security as a federal government employee. They were now placing me at risk for anybody to see, anybody to be able to target me. So it's called doxing. That's one of the ways that criminals target federal government workers. So it's called doxing. So I was being doxed by Montgomery County, Maryland. Now the thing is, and in any event, when I was prevented from going to respond that in court that this peace order was fabricated and that it's a perjured document, I'd called the courts and told them, and they told me to appear in court and take an oath so they could go and issue an arrest warrant for Gurmashumi. But the hospital prevented me from going. So even though they knew that was a fabricated document, because they'd fabricated stuff, they said, well, you're certified. A judge, Bibi Berry, had falsified, had approved a fabricated emergency evaluation petition by Judicial. So they had orchestrated the whole thing because Judicial was there. It was something they had planned. They planned it with Montgomery County Police, planned it with this Gurmashumi. So they committed a crime. So again, it's a USC, 18 USC Section 241 and 242 violation. Now, the 241 is, when civilians do it. 242 is the involvement of the government to deprive you of your rights. So eventually, I was prevented from appearing at court. It was May 24, 2023. And so it was an ex parte order because I didn't appear. Because when you don't appear, then the judgment accepts what the petitioner says, and gives them judgment by default. And while in court, when they wanted to release me on bond, immediately I told the private attorney that Judicial hired, and he refused. He failed to do that. He refused to go and challenge the peace order, even though it was not part of the document. It was part of the record in the trumped-up charges against me, the falsified case against me in Montgomery County, Maryland. The officers who assaulted me had now claimed that I assaulted them. So there were these trumped-up false assault charges against me, even though my attorney had said he still hadn't seen any evidence of assault and the police officers assaulted me. So the objective was to obstruct future prosecution of the police officers and lawsuits that my representatives wanted to file against the state of Maryland for the assault by the and police brutality and illegal arrest. So in any event, Judge Bonifant, when he wanted to release me on August 3, 2023, the pretext he used was that he doesn't want me to get in trouble, right? Because there's a peace order against me that was active. And so he had me stay somewhere. I was staying with friends. He had me stay at my church at the time. He had me stay with people. So so I couldn't stay in my apartment in which I had a lease. The lease was in my name. They still had my security deposits. My lease was not expired, right? My property was all there. So Judge Bonifant prevented me from staying in my apartment and said I should stay somewhere else. His pretext, he used a fig leaf that there's a peace order against me. He doesn't want this Gurmashumi to call the police and have me arrested again because it's on the same corridor. All he has to do is, if he sees me, he'll call the police. Never mind that I'd already told my attorney that it's a fabrication. I told the courts, but because my attorney was preventing me from talking, right? See, and Judge Bonifant never let me respond, so he was just talking. So violating that, you remember, my right to be heard, right, in court, because I'm the one who has a charge against me, but he was violating my right to be heard. So it's a violation of principle of natural justice. That's a violation of, and in Latin again, it's Audi, alteram, partem. So it violates my right to be heard. And remember, Judge Bonifant had a conflict of interest because the hospital that I was held in, Bed-Stuy, is on the board. I have a complaint against them, malpractice complaint. I filed it against them. And that's that conflict of interest. When we say it in Latin, it's sorry. Let me try and remember. I want to keep practicing my Latin, and that's why nemo iudex. Yeah, I'm saying these things from memory, by the way. These are improvised videos that I do. I don't read from a script. When I'm going to read something, I let you know that I'm reading. I show you can see I'm reading from. And no, it's normally maybe from the Bible or something. But now my Latin. I'm trying to memorize Latin and say it off head. So the principle of that's in the Latin is nemo iudex in causa sua. That means a judge. One should not be a judge in their own cause. No one should be a judge in their own cause, right? So again, nemo iudex in causa sua, right? So that's a violation of that. Judge Bonifant was violating, and it also relates to conflict of interest and bias. So that was the pretext. Now, it's been 3 years though. It's been almost 3 years, and the judge keeps placing as a bond condition that I can't live there, even though the peace order has expired. It expired in November 2023. Before it expired, I went to court, filed a motion, to be heard regarding that order, and I told the judge. He was an excellent judge. He listened to me. I told him this was a perjured document, that everything the Gurmashumi said was a fabrication. The Gurmashumi he couldn't speak a word of English. He was using a translator, and he wanted to he started saying about how he knew me well, he's surprised I'm denying that we're not friends, but saying bizarre stuff. I didn't know him. The judge told him to keep quiet. He didn't want him to talk. So the judge listened to me. The judge told me to go, he said I could file look, the peace order is expiring in just a few days, but because I don't want it to be my record and because it's a perversion of justice, he went to get the books himself, started reading the books, right? From the books, he said, I can file for it to be reheard de novo. I can ask my attorney but they have to pay a fee. And I told my attorneys, but my attorneys, of course, they were being controlled by Judge Bonifant lawfully, so denying me effectiveness of counsel, even though this peace order was in the record of the criminal charge, because it's in the state, the incident, the falsified incident with Judge Gurmashumi, it's in the charge statement that they brought it up in court. But my attorney was being controlled to sabotage the case and to conceal evidence. So my attorneys were refusing. And anytime I filed something on my own, the judge would just wrongfully commit me to a psychiatric hospital. So you see the criminal practices of Judge James Bonifant in Montgomery County, how he abuses power to abuse the legal process. It's called abuse of process, and it's judicial misconduct. But I'm seeing all of this now. I'm legally trained. I have a law degree, a Juris Doctor from George Washington University Law School. But I'm stunned by all the illegal, in fact, outright criminal practices of Judge James Bonifant in Montgomery County, Maryland. He's the Circuit Administrative Judge of Montgomery County, Maryland. So, the peace order, he also asked me to go to the police, report it to the police, and or I could go directly to the commissioner's office and have them file charges against him. So I went, reported it to the police, and they directed me to a guy called Robert Sheehan. Robert Sheehan said, well, then what I'm saying is hearsay. It's like hearsay. Those was his word. It's his word against my word. He'll just deny it. But that I can go to the commissioner's office. If the state attorney decides to file charges, then and they can order them to arrest that, they can do it. So I went to the commissioners filed charges against him. They filed charges against Germa Schumer, filed charges against what's his name, Jide. But of course, the state attorney who has the false charges against me, and he knows how it was orchestrated by Montgomery County, he continues to suppress, fail to prosecute them. So, in any event, what Judge Bonifant did was he started to provide false evidence in court. Like you kept on putting as a bond condition that I couldn't return to my apartment. I should stay away. And he was like, that my tenants, and the tenants said I'm a bad person. He started making false statements in court that they don't like me, they don't want me to live there. These were things he was saying. The tenants and people didn't want me to live there, blah, blah, blah. So he was placing it there. And he would raise his voice. He would shout at me. He'd say it in a disparaging manner. But of course, at that time, he wouldn't let me talk because I was insisting on my right to live there. And then he was trying to get my attorney to get a power of attorney over me so they could control my assets, which is bizarre, right? So, and he would never let me talk. Because one, who are the tenants? He didn't provide evidence, so he's using false evidence. The only place that it's on record was that false peace order, which the state of Maryland eventually they even charged that man. They charged him, criminally. The peace order is a civil complaint. It wasn't a criminal charge. So he made all these false accusations as the tenant, Germa Schumer, that I kidnapped him, I assaulted him, that I impersonated an officer. And the police didn't charge me with any of that. They just have a peace order that I shouldn't harass him. That's all. They didn't charge me with any of that. And it was fabricated. You see how this was fabricated? And so Judge Bonifant kept using false information, even though I told him the courts knew that I was a fabricated document. It's a perjured document. Judge Bonifant now said, well, the tenants, people don't want me to live there. Who are the people? If under the U.S. law, my Sixth Amendment right allows me to defend myself against accusers and cross-examine them. No charge, and that's my right. But he's defaming me, and the First Amendment protects me from defamation. So Judge Bonifant abuses his power to defame, to use his court to defame me, to commit crimes, to defame me, to make false accusations, to provide false evidence. I've done videos about his tampering, maliciously falsifying records, documents, and providing false evidence in order to wrongfully, involuntarily commit me. So all he was doing was obstructing the case I had against AION Management, who's the slumlord. That's my landlord that I was living with. So the Attorney General's office was bringing charges against him. They were investigating. The Maryland Commission on Civil Rights were investigating. But Judge Bonifant was using this pretext of this false, malicious prosecution against me in Montgomery County by cops who assaulted me, now claiming delusionally in a lie that I assaulted them. And it hasn't seen the light of day. No trial for 3 years now. Judge Bonifant has delayed, right? He's abused the process and delayed it, right? Continue to impede justice, obstructing justice. So I haven't had my day in court, but the thing is, he keeps preventing me from going to live in my own apartment. And so he was actually obstructing the investigations against Landmark. And each time, I'd file the case, I continue to cooperate with Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. I continue to work with the Office of the Attorney General, who referred it to Maryland Commission on Civil Rights because Landmark apparently retaliated. So it's a violation of the Fair Housing Act to intimidate, or to harass, to interfere with complaints by a tenant who is in compliance, with respect to the Fair Housing Act. So retaliation is illegal. So what Landmark did, AION Management, they have all these weird names, alphabet soup. I think they're also called AP, WHI TIC LLC. They have these weird names. I think it's part of their rogue persona, right? To have these different names, right? These, different names. AION Management, they go by AION Management. Langmack or Glenmont Station, they go by AP, uh, WHI TIC LLC. They're just a slumlord, right? And so they've bribed Judge James Bonifant. I'm an auditor, right? I'm an auditor by profession. I was an accountant. I was a banker. I know how to trace money. I was a private banker. I know how crooked people hide money. And they're judges who get bribed. Judge Bonifant is not doing this as a public good because I'm experiencing injustice. Judge Bonifant, all his actions, he's been perpetrating injustice, and it's because he received a bribe from Landmark AION Management. He sells the judicial office, right? His judgeship, his office, to the highest bidder. That's what Judge Bonifant does, because he used my attorney, the private attorney that GDUI hired, requested a bribe on behalf of Judge Bonifant and the state, right? On behalf of the state, he said the state, but Judge Bonifant has to approve it. So he was bribed as well. He was asking for a bribe, and I refused. When I reported to Judge Bonifant that this man's dishonest, that's why I'm firing him, he realized that, okay, I wasn't going to play ball. I was going to expose the racket that he'd requested a bribe. That's when he now started that he wanted the process of claiming I was delusional, right? That that I'm mentally ill, that I'm delusional, so that anything I say is not credible, that nobody will believe it, right? Even though I'm a man who's known for my integrity, and I'm a man who's known to be stable and analytical. My job as an auditor requires my good judgment. So Judge Bonifant has been trying to discredit this. So he's a judge in his own cause. He should be removed. He should have nothing to do with the case. This is a futile prosecution, a malicious prosecution. But the thing is, it's there in order to effect an illegal eviction by Judge Bonifant, by the state of Maryland, by abusing the court system in Montgomery County on behalf of a slumlord. Now, I've done videos talking about, the Department of the Navy, the DOD, and how he was acting in their regard as well. There's a connection between where I was living and the Department of Defense, right? Because I had complaints against the Department of Defense. So the thing is, the Department of Defense is one of the most powerful agencies in America. It's half of the U.S. government. Of course, the U.S. government has a lot of money now, and they're a big employer for Montgomery County. Now, where I was living, because I was going through a clearance, it means investigators. I was going through another clearance, right, for my job, another one. It meant it authorizes investigators, different people. The government can use different people to come around and investigate me in my building, find out, talk to my to tenants, talk to my landlord and all that. So while these people were doing this, it was a bad faith investigation, because the person who was doing this pretextual investigation, who was involved, a person called Nefertiti McBride, she told me she was getting documents from me. She was already supplying false documentation to get me fired. She was making false statements to the Auditor General of the Navy. Apparently, she didn't know I knew the Auditor General of the Navy. The Auditor General of the Navy provided those records. I got to see all of them, right? Everything she was writing was a fabrication. And Nefertiti McBride was wrongfully involved in the clearance process. She was in my chain of command. She's not allowed to do that. But so she was doing something unethical. She requested my certificate of naturalization. She was doing things that she was not supposed to do. So that's how I know. And because of part of the this clearance process, they go, and by the way, everything I'm saying is not classified. This is not classified information. It's unclassified, right? So part of the investigations process is they get to go to where you live, to the neighborhood, and investigate you and ask people questions about you. Now, if it's a bad faith investigation, right, they start to spread disinformation, because that was part of what was done. They were spreading disinformation. Around May 14 or May 13, 2023, after GDUI had dropped documents in my home, I went to buy things at a restaurant. On my way back, I saw something strange happened. People just started running away from me. Everyone was just running. The in the leasing office, that is the leasing office. All you should see the way they ran terribly. Everybody just got up. Everybody started running. I wasn't going to there's a glass door, sliding door. I wasn't going into the leasing office. I was just coming. They just got up. Everybody just started running away. Right. So you see. So I was wondering what I don't pay attention to the people in the office because I'd reported them. I filed complaints against them. That's my right to petition. I don't assault them. I don't attack them. So I'm not a combative person. I just recorded. I'm not a violent person. That's why I'm educated, right? I know my rights. So I know that I have a right to petition the government. I file a lawsuit against someone who abuses me, who violates my rights, violates me, or attacks me. I can file a lawsuit, right? That's it. I can file a restraining order. Those are things I can do. So I filed a complaint against them. That's my right to petition, right? At some point while I was in jail, the district public defender, Sean Mukherjee, came to me. And he was very helpful because what Judge Bonifant was going to do, he had already fabricated records. And he admitted that Judge Bonifant was violating the law. But he said to me that because he let me know the basis of these trumped up charges. He said I had filed so many complaints that people were thinking that, that it would make people think it made people think that I was crazy. Those were his words. It was that's irrational, right? You filed complaints. First of all, it violates my right to petition. Then he now corrected himself. He said that it creates a perception. I said, no, that's my constitutional right. It's my constitutional right to file a petition. Now, it's either meritorious, right, or it's frivolous. So it's up to the fact finder or whoever is reading the petition, right, to be able to decide. And these petitions have been going. I started representing myself in the case versus the Department of the Navy and Department of Defense. In the case versus Department of Navy, that's a discrimination case. I was winning all my motions, right? The Maryland Attorney General's office started an investigation against AION Management. But the the false case by Judge Bonifant, it's impeded it because he locks me up and then they can't find me. And when I come back, I report to them that this is what happened. And they start to continue their investigation. So in court as well, Thea Zumwalt, in 2023, she revealed that she said something because it's nowhere in the records that it had said that it was my landlord that asked the police to evict me, which is illegal. In court, Thea Zumwalt, not the sharpest tool in the box, but the thing is, she does say things that seem truthful, and I get to realize what's going on. She stated that my landlord asked the police to throw me out of the building. That's illegal. I was not in an eviction process, right? That's retaliation, right? That's retaliation against my filing a petition in consonance with the Fair Housing Act. So the landlord had violated, my rights on the Fair Housing Act, and it was being investigated by Maryland Attorney General's office. And they now did a swatting. They did a false crisis call that I was holding someone hostage. During the investigations on November 12th, 2024, an investigator called Louis Dukes, he revealed to me, because he was interviewing them, because it's a civil rights violation that I was asking Maryland Attorney General to prosecute them, So he revealed to me that Landmark produced some false police reports saying they removed guns from my apartment. So he asked me, go and get the police reports from, but none of this has ever happened. So it's a fabrication, use of false evidence. I've never had a gun. I've never had a gun in my apartment, right? So they were falsifying records, and they're using Judge Bonifant. Judge Bonifant has been obstructing justice. They've been concealing evidence. They've been using fabricated evidence. And Judge Bonifant has been central to all of this, right? Because this case should have been dismissed Let me be able to continue with my lawsuit against AION Management. Let me be able to continue with with my job, and enjoy my life. But Judge Bonifant has impeded the process. He has tried to coerce me to stop living in AION Management, sorry, at 2301 Glen Island Avenue, Silver Spring, Maryland, zip code 20906. When the police removed me and dumped me in the hospital, they fabricated reports to the suburban hospital. At least that's what the suburban hospital said, that I was a homeless psychotic. In the incident report of police incident report of May 14, 2023, written by Sergeant Charles Drengwitz, is retired now. His badge number is 1143. He falsified his report. They gave a false address, that I didn't live there, that I lived at a place I've never lived in. Falsified address at 2416 Glen Island, Sun Valley Circle, Silver Spring, Maryland. They said I lived there. Never lived there. It's not Judicial. So I don't know. That's the fabrication. And they indicated that I just ran into the building and committed a crime, right? Not that that's my own apartment where I live in. So Judge Bonifant has been bribed, right? He's been bribed by AION Management and agents of AION Management and the Department of the Navy, Department of Defense, to effect an illegal eviction, right? An illegal eviction in violation of my rights under the Fair Housing Act of 1968. I'll continue with this video later. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.